Everyone in the world, I feel like, has something that they're better at than anyone else. Sure, there'll always be people who try to use it for bad, but the potential it has to change people's lives far outweighs that. You know, you have one life. Fill it with as much as you can with like things you're actually interested in. And right now it's CS. Maybe tomorrow I wake up, I'm like, nah, I want to try fashion. A lot of times how I would motivate myself is I'd make a bet with a friend. I'd be like, I'll literally pay you like $80 if I don't get 7 pages done within the next like 5 days. You're not able to appreciate the end result if you haven't seen the journey.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Magnus Effect, the podcast where we talk to ambitious college students and understand how they're balancing their ambitions with the day-to-day college life. Unfortunately, I forgot to record this segment before I went on to spring break, so I do apologize if this audio is subpar, but I can guarantee you it's only for this section. Before I go into the introduction, I just want to acknowledge all 50 of my subscribers who have been following my journey thus far. Your support is immensely valuable to me, and I really appreciate you guys seeing this channel grow from the ground up. If you're new here and really enjoy this content, I would really appreciate any follow or any engagement you have with my content. It really helps me grow as a channel and really reach the audiences that could really use this information. With that out of the way, I'd like to introduce ft.Tay, a UC Berkeley sophomore that's majoring in mathematics and computer science. If you're someone who wants advice on how you should go about picking up a skill or want to know general things about artificial intelligence, this episode is just for you. Listen as we talk about ft.Tay's perspectives when it comes to the future of AI, his hidden talents, and much more. As always, I really enjoyed how this episode turned out, and I hope you enjoy it as well.
Hello, Tay. So tell me a little bit about your major.
Yeah, so, you know, as typical of a brown man, I am a CS in math and potentially data science at ORMS, we'll see, depending on how life takes us major. So
you said CS, ORMS, and or data science?
Well, CS and math is declared, and then potentially I'm at a third one depending on how life goes.
So tell me a little bit about your love for math. Like, how did you get into math as a major?
Yeah, so I think I did competitive math in high school. And,
really?
Yeah. A lot of
what
it.
A sweat.
Yeah. No, I was a sweat in high school. So it started off mostly in like 6th grade. I don't know if you know what like math counts is. It's like a middle school math competition basically. And like they have like school level, then district, and then state, and then the top from every state like go to nationals. And it's for 6th to 8th graders. So I joined my school team in like 6th grade, you know, just to like, you know, try it out, whatever. And that's when I told my parents, I joined the team. And then they were like, and then
that
I started
was a
like,
mistake right there.
That was
right?
the biggest mistake. We're getting there. Yeah. So, they saw, you know, I achieved like a decent level of success with that. Like I went to nationals with it. And that's when they started like pushing me more towards it. And, this is a trend you'll see with, you know, my family and many other immigrant families where this is something I think I stand by a lot too, where it's like, their logic towards me is always, like, you know, you wanted to do it first. So like, that's why it's okay. Right.
Right.
But it's like, you never let that develop. You know what I mean? Like in high school, it was just hammered into me to the point where I think I started fearing not winning more than actually wanting to like do the problems. Right.
No.
And like, even today, like if I see like a problem on YouTube, right, like I'll solve it. It's fun. Right. Like I like problem solving, obviously. But if it's like a competition setting, I hate that now.
Really?
Like, it's just all the memories come back from that. Like just, I think they were obviously very well intentioned, as all parents are. It's just the execution was a little questionable with like, and I get, you know, they want the best for me, but again,
I can definitely see that. Yeah. So I guess you kind of came into university just as a way of like continuing that trend.
Yeah. So even university, like, cause I think because over COVID, I got more into CS. I had never coded before that.
Oh, really?
And over COVID, I just had hella time. You know, I was like, I'm not doing anything. I'm literally like spending my time reading like web novels. So like, why not try to do something? So me and my like high school friend, he goes to Northwestern. We do like a lot of just random shit together, right? So we tried like a bunch of things. First, we were like, okay, we're gonna write a book. We got like 20 pages in. We're like, okay, we don't like this. Let's try something else.
What?
So
a book?
It was just like a random fantasy novel that we were trying to write. Right? We had a lot. You'll see that we had a lot of these endeavors that we always tried.
Okay.
Some worked out, some didn't. Then we were like, okay, let's make a game. Right. So that's when we were like, okay, we're gonna make this game called Split. We later realized the issue with Split was it was basically Geometry Dash, but vertical and like 2 of them going. Because it's like the idea was,
oh my gosh,
you know, like those catch app games,
Right.
like on the App Store. It's like if you hold the thing in the middle will like split into two and then come back together
Oh
again.
my gosh.
But it's basically geometry dash, like just jumping over shit. So we're like,
I
okay,
can
never
barely
mind.
play the first game. Like,
Yeah,
I don't even know what this
You know,
one's gonna
we're
do
just
for
trying
me,
it.
man.
That's how I got into CS though with that.
Really?
Yeah.
So since then, have you kind of built any other projects?
Yeah. So from CS, then I transitioned a lot more to the ML side. Because in high school I did this internship my senior year. Because basically my high school had this like, so context, I'm from Arkansas, buttfuck nowhere, but we had like, I was lucky enough to go to a high school where I was just like a standard public high school, but like it was well funded because Arkansas just throws money at anything if you call it CS.
Really?
Like they're like, oh, we're doing CS education. Arkansas will just be like, okay, here's money. We need to develop this, right?
Is that like the focus? Like the state's just trying to be known for CS?
Yeah, they're just trying to like, because it's like 44th for education right now, the state. So it's like, they're like, okay, CS is the future. We got to just throw money at it, right? So our high school was like, yeah, we're starting this new CS initiative. They're like, okay, here's like a bunch of money, like do it, right? And so we had this program called Ignite, which I was really lucky to enter. So your junior and senior year, what happens is it takes up 3 of your class periods. You go for 2 hours a day and you pick one of 8 tracks, right? There's technology, there's medicine, there's culinary arts, there's teaching. It's like professional careers, right? And you pick which one you go to. And typically your first year is more like education. You learn like those skills. And your second year, you go into internships.
Oh, what?
Yeah. So they
As
like
a high schooler.
Yeah, exactly. It was a great opportunity. That's why. And so they connect you with like companies who've agreed to like provide internships every year. So like there's always contracted companies. The culinary arts kids would work in professional kitchens. I was on the tech one. I actually joined the senior year, so I skipped like the education part because I just didn't have enough time in my schedule to do it junior year. So then I had an internship my senior year, and that was a really good experience. But honestly, I think the best part of Ignite was especially the tech part again, because like they just threw money at us. Anytime someone wanted to do like a personal project, right? I had a friend, Abdullah. He just wanted to like, I don't know if you've heard of like the NeuroMaker hand. It's like a hand that's like controlled by your brain, right? So like you just put on like this thing and you can like control it. It's an expensive piece of tech. It's like $1,500, right? And he just told our teacher, and our teacher was just like, okay, I'll order it. And like, it's funny because our school was not like a well-off school. Like our school is like, we're running out of money. What little money that we have, they throw it at sports instead of anything academic. So we're like very underdeveloped.
Really?
It was just this one sector because it was funded by the state that ended up doing well. And I think that exploration, because it was very different from the traditional classroom environment, right? The traditional classroom environment just hammers into you like, oh, here's your test, do this. Here's the next test, do this, right? This was very much like, okay, what do you want to do, right? And it's like, whatever you want to do it to completion, because we had a required like project at the end, but like pick what you want, finish it. We'll give you all the resources you need, right, for it. And the beautiful thing about CS is like, this is what I always think of. Like CS is a field that you can start from anywhere. Like, you could sit in your room with friends and start it, right? If I want to like do like cutting edge research in biology, I need like a world-class lab. I need all this equipment, right? CS, I could make something new just sitting on my computer at home, right? That's the beautiful part about it. And that's like what drew me to it. And I'm really thankful for like that opportunity that I got in high school for that.
So was your learning process of learning CS just like YouTube videos? Did you read a book, or like what did that kind of look like?
Yeah, so I think I stand by like project-based learning. So what happened was initially like, because now I've pivoted a lot more very much to like the NLP side of things, but that was only because my first like exposure to AI was straight with NLP, which is like, typically you're supposed to like learn normal AI stuff first, and then you go into like a specialization, right? There's computer vision, NLP, natural language processing, and so on, right? But they just kind of threw me onto the internship, and they're like, yeah, wade your way out, right? And so I was just sort of like learning on the job and like figuring it out. And like, that's when I like grew to love the field. And I just don't like those tutorials, because it's just like, you don't really learn anything with them. And honestly, you don't retain much when you're just following things like word for word. It's more of just like, okay, I don't know where to start. Let me just start Googling, right? And this was, obviously pre-ChatGPT era. So it's just like one thing leads you to another rabbit hole. And I was just like researching it all and then just built it through that.
So like through this high school program, you basically put yourself in a position where you're learning about AI like before this entire boom. Like I remember like maybe it's been a year now since like ChatGPT has been released. AI is like a big buzzword right now.
Yeah.
But you've been on this train for a while.
Yeah. So my dad's actually a data scientist too. So the interesting thing was actually because my dad, he used to work for Sam's Club, which is like a subsidiary of Walmart. And then he used to be like a traditional data scientist, right? Because data science roles a lot before AI came out was just like a lot of data cleaning and analysis through that, right? There wasn't a lot of like machine learning modeling. So my dad was very well versed at that, right? And then he moved more to the management side with that, which requires a little less technical skills, obviously. But then he transferred to Walmart, and there he had to be the director of machine learning, which the thing is he didn't have experience with machine learning, right? And that's when he started taking like Coursera lessons. And I was like, you know,
Coursera?
yeah, he literally learned it Coursera, like on the job. And low-key, like that's how me and him bonded, because a lot of machine learning is based off of linear algebra. And he asked me to teach him the linear algebra for it. And like me and my dad like had like a rocky relationship a lot of the time, but that's low-key like what bonded us a lot. Like I would start teaching him linear algebra, and like, you know, we just like do lessons on Sundays, and seeing him start learning, I was like, okay, I want to try it too, right? So that's when like I think I started off in ML like before that boom, just because of my dad through that.
It feels like you just made like a simplified explanation right there of like almost like a spark of how you got into CS. And previously, like I remember before you were telling me about how this is like a common trend between like all the different things you're into. Like you just have a spark and you like jump on it. How do you do that?
Yeah, so I think like a lot of my friends have told me like I'm very spontaneous, right? The thing is like I've always have this standpoint, like, you know, you have one life, like do whatever you want on the spot, right? I maybe it backfires sometimes, I will say, obviously, but it's worked out a lot, right? It's like I'm not afraid to like start something new, right? And like that process is like really fun to me, because it's also because I'm never doing it alone, which I think helps a lot.
Really?
Yeah, like a lot of my projects, it's either, you know, like AI initially was through my dad, right? A lot of the projects that I started these days, you know, I'll do it with like my friend. He's at Northwestern. We'll just call each other, stay on call for like 6-7 hours, and we'll just grind through it, right? And I think that helps a lot, because it's like someone who's like equally as passionate. And I'm gonna be honest, like I wouldn't say like I'm in love with CS, right? I think I love what I can build with CS. The process is obviously just as frustrating, and I don't really enjoy the coding process, honestly. But like the thought of what I'm gonna build and like make with it is what excites me, and that's what like keeps me going through that.
That's really interesting that you say that, because yeah, I mean, a lot of the projects I wish I had someone to do it with, you know. I feel like it's extremely hard to find someone that's like as passionate as you are. Did you get lucky, or do you think that there was like a certain way you approached like approaching this person, saying like, hey, I have this like super cool idea, what if you and me just go at this one project? Or like, did you have some kind of like pitch that you made them to like get them on board?
Yeah, I think it was a lot of luck, I'm gonna be honest, because this reminds me, so what happened was in 8th grade, like my parents really wanted me to join the school robotics team, right? This was like before like I knew anything of coding or anything, right? I was just like, I saw a couple of friends and I was like, okay, maybe I'll join, right? But then I realized I kind of forgot the deadline to like actually join, right? So I just went home and told my parents, oh, I got rejected, right? Because like I was like, they'd be more pissed if like I told them that. But the thing was, the teacher of the robotics team at the time, Mr. Eddie, basically I was in one of his classes, right? Like I was just taking a course through him, and like I would finish like the assignment early, and like one of my friends who would also finish the assignment early, he would just ask, because the robotics lab where all the robotics club worked was right next to his room, right?
Right.
So Ani, the friend who would finish, he would just finish the assignment early and he'd be like, oh, can I just go work on robotics, right? And so I'd just be like, you know what, I'll come too, like I'll just watch, right? Because like there's nothing better to do. So I went in and like started helping him. And here's the thing, I had no knowledge of programming whatsoever, right? And I remember he was trying to fix like a bug in his robot's code one time, and I was like looking at it and I was like the language wasn't even that complicated. It was like simpler than Python. I don't even remember what the name of the language was, but like I just looked at it and I was like, okay, like if you change this, maybe it'll fix it. I was just guessing, right? And it worked.
No way.
And I don't know why.
Been a hero that day.
Yeah, I know.
It's like, oh my gosh, how did you do that?
Mr. Eddie came up to me and he's like, you're going to be the consultant programmer for all of robotics. I don't know programming at all. I have no idea what I just did. Honestly, I was just changing random, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, it was all luck then. And that's how I met, like, my friend, too. The one who I do all of these things with. He was in the robotics club. And that's low-key how I met him. And that's how we bonded. And that's how we started, like, doing all those projects together, too.
Interesting. So just kind of, like, put yourself in a position where you're surrounded by some kind of floor of interest.
Exactly, because I think like luck is very much like luck will find, it's kind of corny, but obviously like luck will find people who look for it, right? And it's like if you put yourself out there and you put yourself in that position, like I was just curious, right? Like I could have equally just sat there and like played Nitro Type or something, right? But I was like, oh no, like
I love
he's
that
like,
game, man.
Yeah, I know Nitro Type was like my childhood. But like I saw him like driving this robot and I was like, look, yeah, I want to check that out, right? So I just asked her like, yo, can I just I'm done with my assignment. Can I just go watch him? And so I just go and like we just, you know, because I did that was why like I was able to get that opportunity.
So tell me about all the other stuff that you're doing like outside of CS. Like what other skills, hobbies have you picked up?
Yeah, so I used to a lot of the time I spend is with card magic actually.
Card magic.
Yeah, like we've talked about this as well.
Yeah, we have. Yeah,
you're a little bit of a cardist yourself too. But it started off in high school just because technically like I'm on a visa that doesn't let me be employed, so I wanted like extra money. So since I couldn't get a job, I just started to like pick up card magic and I'd perform at like children's birthday parties and stuff.
And when was this?
This was like through like sophomore year of high school.
This was
like,
sophomore year of high school. Like you wanted to find why magic? You know, like usually side hustles. I think like drop shipping, eBay flipping, or something like that.
Yeah,
why
I think
magic?
those just sounded really. I would like to give a better answer. Like, oh, magic inspired me so much.
Like, did you see like a video of David Blaine? And
no, I think I was looking at Penn and Teller Fool Us or something.
Penn and Teller,
one of them,
okay.
And I was like, I want to do that, right? And it's like the beautiful thing about magic is I'm a person, I'm gonna be honest, like who's still like, I love fantasy, right? Like I love little fantasy novels, all of that, right? Low key, like I'll still like, I wrote my college like common app about Ben 10, right?
Ben 10.
Like
what?
the kids show, yeah.
That's wild.
And like, I'm still like in love with that wonder, right? And the cool thing about magic is like, for like a second, like obviously people like have that thing where like reality settles in for them after you do the trick, like, oh, how'd you do it? Right. But for a second, they'll believe it. Like you'll see it in their eyes.
I think even
like,
after, I mean, if you're a good magician,
yeah,
right,
yeah,
they're just
like,
left dumbfounded.
They're like, they go into that phase where they're trying to rationalize it. They're like, oh, maybe he did this, maybe he did that, right? But like before that, they're like what happened, right?
Right.
And trying to create that moment is like what drew me a lot to magic, because it's like it almost gives that person like a little insight into like my life, right? Like my love of fantasy and all that. And if I can create that in reality for them, like it's just a really cool way for me to connect with someone.
You know, you make it sound as if it was like super easy though, because I mean, I tried card magic at a certain point, but you know, after like messing up and like flashing a card, you know, I felt so demotivated. I was like, oh, this thing's too hard. Like, how do you persist through those times when you're picking up this new hobby or something?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes to just like, again, like I would just envision like the end goal, right? So it's kind of weird because I'd have like levels to fooling people, right? Because I have a 9-year-old brother, right? If I mastered a trick, it would take me like 2 days to like master it just enough to fool him, right? Like even if I slip a little bit here and there, like he won't notice, right? So like it's fine, right? Once I got like it gave me confidence, right? Once I fooled my brother, I was like, okay, let's move up, right? My brother's friends, they're a little older, right? And like, cause they'd always come over to our house to play with my brother.
Oh, really?
So like, they're just cause now like since I did it once for them, every time they came over, they'd be like, can we see another one? Can we see another one, right? And okay, they're like 10, 11. Like, okay, I can do this, right? Like, a little more practice, got to that, right? And then I started performing for my friends at one point, right? And the final boss was always my mom. Because, like, my mom, yeah, literally, she would, like you know, yeah, I'm sure you've, like, noticed this. Like, what I hate most is, like, when I do a part of the trick and my mom's like, oh, do that part again. I'm like, no. Like wait for the whole trick to happen. Yeah.
Right there, I know. I saw that.
She's so, like, she notices that stuff so much that it's like working my way up to, like, my mom, right? And the day I fooled my mom for the first time, I felt so accomplished. Like she doesn't even have any magic experience, but she'll see through like those tricks too, and it's like hella cool. So like that's when I started getting confidence. And a lot of magic is honestly like you'll see like even with cardists, it's all muscle memory, right? Once you can do the move like once, to do it cleanly, it's just repeating it over and over, right? And it's something you can do like in high school, right? If I was like watching a show or like working on an assignment, like watching a video, it's just muscle memory. Like I could do it like in my hands at the same time while watching something else until it became like second nature. So it wasn't like intruding on my life or anything either that I had to like separate my time completely to do.
So you focused on basics, you boiled it down to what is something I can like just brainlessly practice for the maximum result.
Yeah.
And that's what you did.
I mean, yeah, it's not like I would pick them based on that, but like you get to a point where you've practiced it enough to where you don't have to think about it, right? Then it's just like you keep doing it until it becomes really smooth in your hand again.
So you mentioned this was a side hustle. How much do you earn from this? Do you think a lot of other high schoolers should like learn magic?
Oh no, it's not worth it for money. Like nah, I'd make like off a party, I'd make like $25. Yeah, and it's like creating the routine is already like so much more work than like the actual performance. You have to prep it, right? Because like, you know, like in Magic, a lot of like some tricks you can do impromptu. Some tricks you have to have a setup in the deck, right? So it's like when you're making a show, you have to make sure to make your setup trick the first trick, so that when you pull it out of the deck, it's already set up. And then once it's been shuffled around, now you can do your impromptu tricks,
You're
right?
revealing some tricks right now.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. We're not going into too many details, right? That you can check out. You know, book a show with me or something. No, I'm kidding.
Book a
But,
show.
yeah. So it was like that prep was like a lot of time went into. But I think Magic really also just allowed me to like find like even like the social aspect of it, because it's just a great way to like meet someone or like get to know them better too. It just breaks the ice really well. Like, you know, a friend, like if I was at like a high school party, my friend introduced me to another friend, right? We're just talking like, oh, what are you into? And like if I ever said Magic, they'd be like, oh, show me a trick, right?
Right.
And I would always come equipped with like a deck of cards. Like even like in my backpack, there's probably a deck of cards.
Damn,
right?
that's crazy.
Like I'm always equipped, right? And it's a great way to just break the ice then, right? Because you do it to one person, someone else at the party notices, and then they're like, oh yeah, like
you got a whole crowd on
and
you.
Just keep going, right? And it's just a great way to break the ice. Like I didn't really like, just because of my childhood, like I wasn't really allowed to hang out with like a lot of people until like junior year of high school. So a lot of my time was spent just like on call with people and like doing that. And I think once I was allowed to like go out and all that, like it made the process a lot easier for me, because I could connect with them through something I was very familiar with, right? I didn't have to like go through like a new avenue or like a new way to try to connect with them through.
Right. You know, I'm going to dive a little deep here, but I noticed during this conversation, you're talking about a little bit about your childhood and how like you always want to like impress your mom or like to fool her, like almost.
Yeah.
Do you kind of did you see that translation towards like a lot of your other skills and other hobbies? Like, are you in a position where you're constantly trying to like impress your parents?
For sure. I mean, a lot of it comes from, you know, like that immigrant family mindset. But like, you know, I grew up, you know, like I was in India until like I was 9.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so like, and I moved around a lot in my childhood, right? Like right now, like I stayed in the same house now since 7th grade, but before 7th grade, that was my 16th house. So
16th house?
So we were living in 16 houses in 12 years of my life.
That's insane. All within India, or do you travel around the world? Or
here, we came to the United States, Arkansas, lived in Philadelphia for a while, moved back to Arkansas. I was always switching around. Like I was always in a different school every year, right? And obviously, like, the thing is, like, it sounds like a lot, but it's just something that a lot of immigrant families go through, right? Like, it's the same process, you know, you adapt, all that. But I think a lot of it just came down to, like, my parents, yes, they had, like, a lot of expectations for me, right? And, like, I think it honestly just came down to, again, like, I was never allowed to, like, develop my own passions, right?
Really?
Because,
wait, you weren't allowed to?
I mean, not allowed to, but it's, like, once I did, like, it's the same example, like, competitive math, right? Or CS, where, like, once I showed an interest for something, then they'd start like hammering it into me, right? Like, oh, now go do this, now go do this. And that love of that thing turned into a fear of failure instead, right? It's like, okay, now I don't want to disappoint them because of that, right? And I think that translated a lot into like a lot of the activities I did were a lot to impress them, right? You know, they told me to pick up debate sophomore year. I was like, okay, I'll try it. And I tried it. I just hated it so much. And I think that was the one time I managed to like get out of like doing something they wanted me to do, and like I dropped it, and just like I was like, no, I'm not doing that.
What was so
again.
terrible about it?
We switched to like a new teacher. So our debate program was actually like good, but then the teacher switched out, and this new teacher was just like really condescending towards like all the students. Yeah, and I literally had to like, I told my dad, and he was like, we're going to talk to the teacher. I was like, no, like I don't want to start anything right now. Like we're good. Like the point is, like, I think yes, they were like well intentioned, trying to like push me a lot, right? Like I remember even in high school, like I think it was like sophomore year, I hadn't taken like any like chemistry course before, right? And I was like telling my dad, like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna take like the accelerated chemistry course this year. He's like, oh, why not take AP chemistry? And I was like, I can't. Like the school's rule is you have to take accelerated chemistry before. He's like, no, like let's go talk, right? And sure, like it sounded, I was annoyed at the time because I was like, I don't want to like, you know, start anything, all that. Of course, right. But then like my dad went to the parent teacher conference, and he just pulled up to the AP chemistry teacher, and he's like, yo, like, just let my son take it, right? And like he argued with him, they let me, right? And it actually worked out for the better. And it's just like, that's the thing, like, yeah, sure, like my parents pushed me a lot, but also they showed me a lot through like what they did for me, right? Like if my dad hadn't done that, then I wouldn't have been able to take AP chemistry that year, right? And I remember that was the first all-nighter I ever pulled to learn all of accelerated chemistry, like the day before AP chemistry. Oh, because I was like, yeah, I don't want to like be the one kid in class who doesn't know anything, because I had no chemistry experience before this at all. So it was just like I really admired my dad that day, because like he pushed through just something like a lot of times in the world, you think like, oh, this is a set rule. Like this is just not going to happen or whatever. Right. But like all it takes is just asking enough. And once you do, that opportunity opens up right there too. Right. And that's a lot of what they showed me there too.
And I'm sure you can say that about a lot of opportunities you see on college also, and everything about life. I mean, everything's just up for grabs as long as you're willing to ask. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's especially true like at a place like Berkeley, because like, you know, you look at like a lot of private schools and like, it's true that like, you know, obviously they're really great. They have really great resources. And a lot of those resources are handed to you. That's the difference, right? When you come to Berkeley, it's like all those resources are there for sure, but you have to go look for them, right? No one's just going to like hand you that resource or like tell you that. Once you start go looking, you'll definitely find it. But I think that prepares you a lot better for life as well, right? Because it's the same with life. Like the resources will always be there around you no matter where you are. It's just about you have to actively go and look for them. So like, that's the main difference.
Before I want to expand on that topic, I still want to continue this conversation of like expectations almost. I feel like a lot of people in your position who experience, from what I'm hearing, from what you've experienced throughout your childhood, would almost label that as like trauma, and they'd want to just use it as an excuse to kind of stay at home, to feel pity for themselves. How do you kind of see how you're supposed to like get out of that rut? Do you think that your circumstance is different, or how do you approach that?
Yeah, I think in high school, I definitely was in that rut of like, you know, like I'd start just like sulking about that. And like, sure, like, you know, like every child has like trauma from something that happened in childhood, and right? Like it's affected me a lot too, right? There are like a lot of incidents I went through in high school, whatever. But I think a lot of it just came down to, I realized that COVID was like low-key a blessing in disguise for me, because it allowed me to get closer to my parents in a different way, right? Because in my, you know, in your head, like a lot of the issues that happen when you're older, you can kind of rationalize, right? Because it's like, oh, you know, I know that they're well-intentioned, whatever. But like when these things happen when you're like really young, like when you're like 4 or 5, you're at that age where it's like they tell you something like that, you're like, oh, they hate me, right? Like that's all you think about, right? Because you're just not mature enough to like rationalize that.
It's a weird thought to like think about how you were back then.
Exactly, right? Yeah. And like I remember this like fully. Like I remember like my mom would just say something to me, and like I remember like one time I lost my water bottle at school, right? And my mom like was like, go get it, right?
Oh,
and I was like 7, right? And I fully thought my mom was serious, and I just I literally, she was in the shower, I walked out of the house, started walking towards my school. It's like 5 miles, I don't even know where it is. Like I'm just walking, right? And like luckily one of my friends who was coming home from school found me like a mile from my house and like took me home. And my mom just like never followed me, and I was fully convinced. I was like, oh, she hates me. Like she hates me, right? While if this incident had happened if I was older, like I would have rationalized, oh, she was like trying to teach me a lesson through that, right?
Right.
But like when I was younger, I was like, no, she just doesn't care about me. Like this is all it is, right? But a lot of those issues start like festering in your mind, right? Like they become deep-rooted things. And I think it took until like COVID when I was able to like get like a lot closer with my mom and my dad. Like my dad especially throws lessons and all that, right? With my mom, it's just I used to do a lot of like household chores, right? Now that my mom's like, oh, you have extra time, right? So I fully remember like I would be like cleaning like the kitchen counters and like the cabinets, and my mom would be cooking at the same time, and we'd just be talking about like random stuff. I'd be telling her like, you know, what I'm reading, what my like friends are up to, all that. And like it made me like on one hand, it made me realize I could talk to her a lot about a lot more things than I was comfortable with, and it made her realize too that like, you know, like not everything has to be like, I don't have to be all that sheltered, because I think she realized also that I understood a lot more about the world than she thought I did. And like she can trust me with a lot more on my own, with a lot more autonomy than she thought she could before. And I think that like worked out a lot better because of that.
That's one of the scariest things I like think about, man. Like if I were to have kids, like how would I even balance that? You know, you always hear it from parents, like there is no rule book, but yeah, how do I even build that trust? How do I make sure I'm not over exceeding anything? How do I know that they're not going to turn into like a mess up? Like so many different things.
It's a lot of it is experimental, right? Like I think every generation just takes what they can, like the good parts, and like tries to keep away from the bad parts. But like this is also something I've thought about. It's like, you know, we always think like, oh, we're gonna be the kids that like are the cool parents, right? We're gonna be the kids that are like gonna be chill with everything and like make sure. But like I feel like our parents probably thought that when they were kids too, right? It's like, what happened? Like how'd they grow up, and then like what's it like? I don't know if that transition is gonna happen to us as well. If we grow up, like are we not gonna be chill then? Like the same with our parents.
I mean, the world's changing like at a rapid pace. Who knows? Like you know, I got my first phone when I was in high school.
Yeah.
You know, kids are getting in elementary
That's
school.
what I remember.
You know,
This, yeah.
so it's kind of wild to just see how where we are now. I mean, I would probably be surprised. Maybe in the future, it's like normal for your kid to have like a Neuralink implant.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? It's like so many different things that you can't like set in stone. You know.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's just a matter of like staying, updated and like with the time. I think a lot of that was lost. I think the good thing about today's society is it's easier to stay updated, right? Because of the technology that we have and the way we can connect. So like, in our parents' time, obviously like, because like even us, like while we're older than like, like the second or third graders today, we're kind of aware of like what kind of culture they have, right?
I like to hope so.
Yeah, exactly, right? Not saying I agree with the whole, like a lot of it. Like it's kind of obviously like we make fun of it sometimes too, but it's like we're aware of it, right? We're aware of like what's going on in like that age group's lives. It's sort of like we're almost aware of like what's going on in a lot of age groups' lives, and that's just because of like the internet, right? And us being exposed to so much media and so much content that like we can upkeep with all of that. Whereas like in our parents' age, they didn't. And so when they finally found out, when their first bridge to that younger age was their own kids, right? And then like they just jumped like a 30-year period, right? And they just weren't aware of what kids today are doing.
Right.
I think that's what's going to be different about us because we're always updated. So it's never going to be like a shock to us, at least.
That's a really interesting take that I never really thought about. Question: if you had like kids, like what would be like the values you'd want to install in them like immediately?
Yeah. I think the first thing is just like making sure that like what you do doesn't hurt others, right? I'm not saying like I don't want like my kids, like I'm not saying I don't want, like I'm okay with my kids not having something of like, oh, they don't have to like be like, oh, I want to help everyone, I want to like save the world, whatever. If that's what they want to do, sure. If that's not what you want to do, that's fine too, right?
Right.
It's like just make sure that what you're doing isn't hurting others at the very least, right? Like you're a functioning member of society. Other than that, it's like one thing they need to realize is just that, and I stand by this, is like everyone in the world I feel like has something that they're better at than anyone else, right? So, and that comes in two facets where it's like, one, you need to have confidence in your own ability to do something then, because you can, right? And the other side of that is you can't look down on anyone else, right? For it. Like I have a friend in high school, I had like, he's still one of my friends, right? Aditya, he was almost failing high school, right? Like in senior year, he didn't show up at all, right? And like the teachers would try to find him to like get him to take remedial classes, but they couldn't find him, so they couldn't tell him that.
Bro
right?
was just gone.
Yeah, and like my
He just
parents would like
ditched.
hear about him, and they'd be like, "Oh, don't hang out with him. He's like a bad influence," right? But this dude was making like $15K a month off of shoe reselling, right? And it's like, sure, school isn't for him, but like he's doing great for himself, right? And like that's fine, right? I literally had like a bet with one of my friends. I'm like, yeah, he's gonna drop out of college within 2 months, right? And he did it, and like he's doing great for it, right? And he's doing well in life, and I was like, I'm really proud of him for that. And it's just he found his niche, right? Academics doesn't have to be everyone's niche. It doesn't have to be my own kid's niche, right? Like if that's not for them, I'm not saying like just skip school entirely, but like you can relegate your focus to whatever you want to, as long as like you have a certain degree of upkeep and everything else.
So kind of picking back off of that, like how would you describe what you have the most confidence in? What do you think you have the most competitive edge in?
Yeah, I think I've always said this. Like the thing is like a lot of like people like I think a lot of my like experiences come from the practice I've had, right? Like even with math, like coming to Berkeley, like like it hasn't like the math experience has been a lot easier just because of my experiences, right? But if I said one thing that I thought I was naturally talented in, it's the ability to bullshit.
Really?
It's really weird. Like I can bullshit about anything, and that's gotten me so many opportunities and opened so many doors for me that it's like I can sort of adapt on the fly, and that's like been my biggest thing. Like,
I need to hear one of these stories.
No, it's really weird. It's like you could like give me like a topic that I don't know, right, or something, and like I could pretend I know it, right, in a way where it's like even in class, right, it got me out of a lot of situations where like it's like let's say I'm like this is a really small example, right, but if I was in class in high school or like even here and like I'm just like dozing off, right, I don't know anything, and the teacher like all of a sudden notices I'm dozing off, right. I'll just like, and I'll raise my hand. I'll ask a really pointed question. Like I'll look at the board and I'll just ask I don't know the answer. I don't know anything about what's going on, but like, it's like almost like contextualizing yourself and being like, okay, this is a really specific question that's specific enough to where they think I'm paying attention.
Interesting.
Right? And it's like, just sort of bullshitting that on the spot and making that up on the spot. Right. And like that applies to even like social situations or like getting opportunities. Right. I remember like even like with, like the first internship that I had, right? I'm gonna be honest. Like I went up to the dude and like this was one I had with Walmart in high school, right? Again, I told you I had no AI experience at all, right? And I just remember like seeing this one like news little piece on Instagram about like some AI thing that was happening, and I just drilled into that, right? And I hyper focus on that topic so much that like I was like live reading his face to like get cues of what I was saying was like on
Bro
track.
himself as an
not.
AI trying to like
I
figure
know.
shit out.
I was just like, yeah, like, it's just like that skill has become so practiced to me, and it's opened a lot of doors for me, which I really appreciate. And it's not just doors in terms of like opportunity; it's also just like with friends, right? A lot of my friends that like I've maybe like become really close with, it was maybe because I made up some bullshit story that they found like funny later or something, right? So
Do you feel like that's like do you ever find yourself almost like kind of having like imposter syndrome that way? Because you know you have this innate ability, but because you're calling it bullshit, I mean, do you kind of feel disconnected from the connections you're making or the connections you start even?
I think it allows you know, like that fake it till you make it kind of thing. It's like I have the confidence to make it once I've faked it, right? Because it's like once you've like landed your like let's say you have an opportunity, right? If you've landed yourself in the door, now the path is clear, right? Now I just need to fill in the gaps, right? That door was initially closed. I didn't know what was behind it, but now that I've like bullshitted my way into it, I have a path to like see, like even with my AI thing, right? Once I landed that internship, I knew what I had to do to like catch up, right? And like I scrambled and like worked hard for that to like get there. And like even with friends, like sure the story initially started off as whatever, but like we made a genuine connection after that, you know, and we like hung out, whatever, and like became a good bond through that.
Your philosophy is amazing, but you know, before I get carried away, let's talk about your campus involvements. Tell me, like, what are you doing on campus right now?
Yeah, so I'm involved with a couple of clubs and some other things. So one of the things is 180 Degrees Consulting at Berkeley. We just work with, one of the other 60 consulting clubs on campus. We work with, social impact companies. And I'm also involved with Data Story, which is more on the data side consulting, a lot of like data analysis, data modeling. I also do CSM, so that's like CS mentorship for like peers with students. I have research that I do on campus, and I'm currently also doing an internship. So.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's one outlier in that whole thing, which is consulting. You know, everything else is like data science or computer science. Like, tell me about how you got into consulting.
Yeah, that was more, I think I just got swept into that wave at Berkeley, like
Really?
You walk on Sproul first day and you're like, who are these 70 people handing me flyers? They're really good at their job. I'll find random flyers in my pocket that I didn't know I had.
For someone who's never come to Berkeley, like, can you describe what the scene looks like?
It was,
like,
okay, yeah. So it's like, so the main part of Berkeley is this part called Sproul, right? And it's like, just imagine like just a giant open area. And there's tents everywhere. Like for a half a mile straight, there's just tents of all these different clubs on both sides. And it's like, imagine like a those people who ring your doorbell at your door to like try to sell you stuff, but there's no door blocking them. They'll just come up to you and start like talking to you, walking with you, trying to like convince you to like take a flyer. And there's like 70 of them, and like if you don't take it, they'll literally just stick it in your pocket or they'll just give it to you in your hands, and like they use different strategies. And I can say this because I've been on the other side now. I've been flyering people. And we get really good at our jobs because we have to. Yeah. One thing I realized though is we hate our jobs, the people flyering, as much as you hate us. Like we don't want to do this either. We know we're bothering you, but we kind of have to for like recruitment.
Right. For the sake of like, why do you think clubs like try to rack up their recruitment numbers? That's something I'd always like wonder about. Like if you have like a brand name on campus, like why do you think you have to fight so hard to like get more applicants and flyer?
Yeah, exactly. I think to a certain degree, I agree with it, but not all the way. So I get it, when there's like new freshmen on campus, like to get to them to be at least be aware of like, who you are and what you represent and the people you have, because, you could miss that one good applicant from like someone you didn't flyer, right?
Right.
And like, I know like some of the people who joined our club right now, like they're like someone me or my friend just randomly flyer. And if we hadn't, like they wouldn't have found out about it, right? But to another degree, it's also, a lot of these clubs just want to inflate their like application numbers, like for the sake of prestige, which I don't really agree with, because it's like the whole philosophy of like clubs on Berkeley is so weird, because people literally take it to their ego. Like if they get rejected by a club, like they take it hard. Like I've seen people cry about like their rejections, and I've seen people like, like feel superior about it, which is the stupidest thing to me, because we're literally students evaluating other students. Like
Right.
Me on
It's
the
like, who
other
do you
side
think
of the
you
table,
are, right?
exactly,
Type
right?
of thing.
Like me on the other side of the table, evaluating an application, I have no leg up over you. Like you are just as qualified as I am. Like it's just, and a lot of it also I realize comes down to luck. Just being on the other side of the process, like so much of it comes down to luck and just like who's reading your application just ends up so random. And I think people just take it to heart way too much, but at the end of the day, like being involved in a club, like I honestly, like as you mentioned, like why did I do consulting? It started off just as a social thing. Like it was just, I wanted like another community to bond with, like I think I found like a group of friends, but also just like expand out, and like meet more people. That's what I started off as. But like I think I genuinely like do like the work we're doing, and like it's been really impactful.
So what about your other club, Data Good at Berkeley?
Yeah, data stories.
Data
So,
story.
yeah, I
'Cause
just joined that this semester.
If you have one like community already, does it benefit you to have another community?
Yeah, I think it was more so because the club that I'm in right now, it was a lot of like business majors and a lot of like, and they're like different aspirations, which is fine. Like like some of my closest, like a lot of my closest friends aren't even CS, right? But it's like just getting that like perspective with someone to troop through like all the CS classes with and all of that. That's a different side of things too, right? And yeah, I have like a couple of friends who do that, but also like the thing with CS at Berkeley is everyone is taking courses at their own pace, right? So like a class I might take a certain semester, like none of my friends are taking that semester, right? And I think like when I joined Data Story, like I found a lot of people, who are like pursuing the same thing as me. There's always a couple of them who are like in those same classes, we'll have late night study sessions, we'll work through that stuff together. And it's just a great bonding experience. It's a great another way to meet people. So
Okay. Have you had any like meaningful connections that came out of these clubs?
yeah, for sure. I think that's the most valuable thing, honestly. Like, I mean, I was like, I don't even think I put Data Story or 180 on my resume. Like,
Really?
There's just like things I do for like the connection, right? And like for the people, because like I genuinely, I told you, like I met some of my closest friends through that, and it's been really like, because you can't bond with the whole club, right? Like there's too many people there, but even getting like 2 or 3 of those people who like now your closest friends to that makes it all the more worth it, right? Because those are the people that are gonna stay with you like for the rest of your time.
I could definitely see that, and yeah, I can attest to that too. With like my clubs on campus, like that, I consider them as great friends. So
Exactly. Yeah.
definitely see that. Also, CS mentors. Like, tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I started off actually as course staff for CS70, which was like the discrete math and probability course here at Berkeley. And I did course staff for around 2 semesters before I switched to CSM, mostly because I realized I can't trust myself with too many kids.
Why is that?
I think it was just like, I remember one time, like I almost just like canceled the discussion because I slept through it.
Oh my gosh.
Not good. But like it's mainly it was because too many students, like I just can't focus on like actually like mentoring each one, right? If I'm gonna like be teaching you, I want to see your progress through all this. I want to see what your weak points are, and then I want to target those and make sure you grow through that, right? But if there's like 25 kids at once and we only meet twice a week, right? I can't focus on each person like that, right? I'm lucky if I remember like most of their names, which I did by the end, but like it also took me a while, right? CSM, the beauty of that is like it allowed me to see. So for context, CS Mentors is just this other like it's a club, but they've gotten sponsorship from campus, so now it's like an official course that students can take. And it's like if you're taking CS70, you can, or like any of the CS classes, you can take the corresponding CSM as well. We meet 2 times a week for an hour, and you can get an extra unit for that too. On your
okay, so that's
transcript.
how you like benefit from it.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And it's for a lot of students enroll in it. It's just for anyone who wants to stay on track more. And we'll just do mentorship through that. And so I have like 5 or 6 students. And okay, it started off as 5 or 6 because the limit is 6 officially, but I'll just like meet random people sometimes. Like we were at the gym literally here in this building on the Standard like 2-3 weeks ago, and this dude met me and he was just talking about 70, and I was like, oh, I run CSM sessions for that. He's like, oh, can I just pull up? And now he just pulls up every week, and like he's not officially enrolled, but like he's in my mailing list. I send them all the resources and everything.
Oh,
too.
damn.
And there's like 2 other students just like that who like you just meet randomly, and now that they've started coming. And it's like it's still at a manageable level where I think I can focus on every student. So and I think that's really rewarding. So
Yeah, I was just about to touch on that aspect of it. I mean, I've had a couple guests on here talk about how they really love teaching, how it's like really rewarding to them. Do you also find that same like passion, the drive to like help people?
yeah, definitely. I think it's a lot of it depends on like what you're teaching, obviously. I think I get excited by like because like especially CS70, this course, it's a lot of like it allows it you have to like do a lot of reframing your thinking because it's a lot more problem solving based than like traditional high school like math, because it's honestly a math class. It's not even a CS class. It's a math class, but a lot of high school math was just like, plug and chug, right? The teacher told you how to do this, you repeat it on the test, right? This is a class where it's like, oh, I don't know how to do it. I have to think of a way. I have to like innovate new ways, right? Which a lot of it follows like how competitive math worked and all that. And it's like, it allows you to reframe your thinking in a really different way. And there's a lot of beautiful solutions that come out of it, right? There's like these really beautiful conclusions that you see in like the topics covered, and they're really cool. And I honestly get excited. I'm like, I want to see when the student like understands it. I want to see that look on their faces. I had that same look, like because it's just so like it works out in such a neat way. Some of those like topics that like seeing that on a student's face when they finally figure it out is like the most rewarding thing.
It's like seeing a puzzle come together.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Oh
yeah.
wow, okay. Do you see that same relationship in like your last hobby or your last involvement research?
Yeah, like even with research, I think with research I've realized it's a lot more like, I thought like everyone knew exactly what they're doing when I walked into the research lab, right? I was like, okay, like, these people, no one knows what they're doing.
Really?
Honestly, yeah. Like, especially because the field that I'm doing research within is so novel, right? It's leveraging large language models, just such a new technology. Well, they've been there for years, but like the capability that they have now is at such an accelerated rate. Like in the field of generative AI, new papers are coming out every day, right? And there's like 10 new things that'll come out a new day, and like you have to like keep up with all of them. So you realize that no one's truly able to keep up, and everyone's just trying to like stay on track. And like seeing everyone like be surprised by the results that come through and bond through that, like this is amazing, right? Not everything's a surprise now. It's not like even the professor, you think they're like world renowned, they're at the top of their field, but even some of the research that comes out, like it surprises them because it's
Really?
like accelerating so fast.
What have you been able to discuss, or are you able to disclose that at all? Or
Yeah, so I mean with the lab, it's not much. I can talk about generally like with like, because like generative AI is now like a field I've been pretty involved in across my research. My internships, 2 of my internships last summer were also like leveraging large language models as well. And I think it's basically because large language model, that's how like GPT operates, right? It's just one of them, and there's like hundreds of them that come out like every time, right? One thing we've realized about large language models is like you think there's like a limit to this technology, right? That like, oh, at one point there's a plateau at like how good it
has
can
to
get,
be,
right?
It's just too powerful.
Exactly, right? And like what we've realized is large language models are actually pay to win. Like we realize if you just throw more money at them, train them for longer and on a bigger data set, they just perform better. Like, and we haven't found a plateau yet, which is the craziest thing. Like right now there's models being trained, like you train them on GPUs for like $10 million, right? For like 2 weeks, right? On like this large data set. If someone had like 50 million and they like trained it for longer on a bigger data set, so far, all the evidence supports it would just perform that much better. Like there's no plateau to it right now. That's not to say that this is the end all be all, right? Because obviously it's very computationally intensive, right? And a lot of like what large language models are based on is this technology that came out like about 2017, this idea of this thing called a transformer, which in the field of NLP was like revolutionary, where transformers leverage something called attention, where it's basically, how in real language, like I'm talking to you, sometimes like I use a pronoun or I use something else and it's referring to certain things that I've already said, right? A lot of what NLP did before was it would focus on everything that was already said, right? And a lot of that was unneeded, right? So it introduced this concept called attention, which we can mathematically quantify now, so that, okay, I know this refers to this previous part of context, so I can specifically focus on this, right? And that makes the training process a lot faster, right? Because I don't have to focus on everything at once, almost. And that's to say that, like, yes, currently we're using transformers and we see that it's pay to win, but that's not to say some new technology that's entirely like a different structure could come out tomorrow and just overhaul this entirely. And now we could train like a GPT level thing for a couple $1,000s. Like, who knows, right? Interesting.
So it starts off with a word, and the word goes to a transformer, and the transformer.
Yeah. So basically, the thing is, a transformer is it can be trained through different things. So there's also vision transformers that are used for like computer vision, right? But basically, how they used to do it before was a lot of using these things called recurrent neural networks, because if you look at a traditional neural network today, it's like, like the most basic thing is like handwritten digit classification, right? A lot of times it's like, oh, if you draw a digit, what is the number, right? Neural networks are really good at doing that. And that's because there's like a fixed size input, right? In my input is, these are the pixels of like what I drew. And my fixed size output is, it's one of these numbers, right? It's very like steady state. But with speech, what's the issue? It's changing. Right? There's a variable size input, right? I don't know how long my words are going to be. I don't know how short it's going to be. So the thing that recurrent neural networks did was they added a loop into the neural network where basically like if I feed in one word, it'll predict the next word, right? But then I'll take the next word and feed it back in again, like in a loop, and use those 2 words to make a new one, those 3 words to make another one, like loop that, right?
Interesting.
The issue again that became with that was it takes really long to train, right? Because what happens if you get to like 500, 600 words? Now you're
Constantly
feeding in
just
all
shoving
of that, right? And it's
right.
getting longer and longer. So that's when, you know, there's this intermediate stage, but then it came to transformers, which was like, okay, I don't need to focus on exactly everything that's going on, but I can mathematically quantify what's important and take that as context, right? And that's what all these large language models today are based on. But that's not even the biggest innovation because a lot of work today, I'm going to start to nerd out for a second.
Oh, good. Yeah, no, I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah,
I'm like learning so much.
So there's this really big thing that as soon as large language models came out, there was this thing called RAG. It's retrieval augmented generation, right? Which is basically like, so a large language model has like a fixed context, right? It's like, okay, like maybe like 1,000 words, right? I can only feed GPT 1,000 words at once and it'll work off of that, right? It has an existing knowledge base that it'll reference, but for instructions, it can only use those 1,000 words, right? But now it's like, what if I want to ask GPT like about my data or like this, like about a book that I have and GPT doesn't know that book, right? So what it does is basically what I do is I take my book and I turn all the words into vectors, right? And that's how a lot of NLP is done today, where these are vectors in like a really high dimensional space, right? There's a lot of values there, but they capture the meaning of the words, right? And it's like, now what I'll do is I'll take my question. So now I have like this large query of vectors, right? It's a 1,000-word book. So I have like millions of vectors stored in this vector database, right? And now I'll take the question that I have, like maybe the book is like, I don't know, Harry Potter, right? And my question is like, oh, you know, what spell did Harry use to kill Voldemort, right? It'll take that question and it'll also turn it into a vector and then run vector similarity. So it's like, what vectors in my existing corpus are really similar to my question, right? And then it'll just take that chunk of text because GPT doesn't need to know that Harry has a lightning scar to know what spell he used to kill Voldemort, right? It'll just take the context that's relevant and then put that as context for GPT and then give me the answer based on that, right? And that's a really powerful technique that's come out. But this is like, now it's like a year and a half old. But there's just, that's to say there's always new optimizations happening in different parts. Because you can think of an LLM almost like a pipeline. So there's like different stages of it. It's like first turning words into vectors, then it's understanding them, then it's producing content, right? And there's always different optimizations happening at every part of the process. I could change this part of the pipeline and make it better. This part of the pipeline I could make it better, right? Even prompting, right? You know, when you give LMs prompt, like prompting is a whole new industry that's opened up now, right? And there's so many like innovations happening there, right? Because honestly, LLMs today are still a large black box where it's like, people don't know exactly what happens inside them. No one knows. Like
I always thought they had some kind of thing you could trace back.
Yeah, no,
is that wrong?
Thing is like, with large language models, with transformer, like a traditional transformer, we know exactly how it works. But once you get to the scale of a large language model where it has 70 billion parameters almost that it's like tuning, right? We don't know exactly how it works. All we can see is it's improving performance as like we feed it more data, right? Yeah, it's a black box. That's the scary part. And there's people who are researching that still, but we haven't found a full solution, right? But all we know is, okay, we can make these different optimizations and they're making things better, right? And that's just to say that this is an industry that's changing so rapidly every day that it's really hard to keep up because, you know, there might be one paper that's optimizing how like words are turned into vectors, which is like tokenization, right? Or there's one part that's optimizing this part of the process. And there's like 6 different papers that release on everything. And to like upkeep with them, you have to keep up on all of them.
But that sounds like too much information.
I mean, it's a lot of information, but it's also really beautiful, right? Because you don't know what's coming next, right? The next day, the next greatest technology that overhauls GPT, it took it 3 days to like overtake the world, right? And like, you just don't know when the next great technology is coming out, which is the cool part.
I'm seeing a lot of different kind of views on the potential for AI, all the different harm it could do, all the different good it can do. Mm-hmm. I know the biggest concern right now for a lot of companies is the release of some AI company releasing basically what I've heard is open source, mm-hmm. right? Where like the public can just basically train a model on anything that they want to.
Yep.
How do you kind of see the future of AI? Like, do you see it as a positive thing? Is there something that scares you about it?
Yeah, I think technology has always been a thing where, like the world's just adapted, right? Humans are going to continue to innovate. It's just going to happen whether it's dangerous or not. It's up to everyone else to, like, because there's certain people who will always continue to develop without thinking about how it's used or not. They're just going to continue to develop, right? Then there's that's the cool thing about like the world, right? There's like groups of people who focus on different things, right? Then there's another group of people who's going to focus on, okay, how do we regulate this technology and how do we make sure that, it's safe for everyone to use, right? Then there's these groups of people where like a company could make it open source or not. Someone's going to find a way to like get their hands on that technology, right? Like people are stupid. Like they'll if someone wants something, they'll get it somehow, right? Someone's going to find a way. And I don't think that makes a difference. Honestly, it excites me more than anything. The idea of like, releasing open source, because the potential is insane now, right? Like imagine like, like a teacher in a classroom. And the cool thing about AI is now it's becoming so much more of a low code thing, right? You don't even need to understand how to program a lot of times it's lowering the barriers of entry to like use these technologies, right? Today, sure, if I want to like fine tune an LLM to like really specific things, I need to know like a lot of how it works. But I'm telling you, like, give it like 3 or 4 more years, and there'll be a very low code. Like, I think OpenAI already released a playground that lets you like start doing that. But it's gonna come to an experience where like, if a teacher's in a classroom, right, and she wants like teach her kids something, they want to have a personal tutor for their child at home or whatever, she can fine tune an LLM without knowing how to code just for that task, right? And the power is all she needs is a computer, right? That goes back to the beauty of CS, right? You can put so many resources, and that's not to say that a computer is something that's fully widely available, right? But I'm saying in comparison to a lot of the resources that people sometimes need, right? Like people pay what, like thousands of dollars a year for like tutoring or like for this, right? Or like to get ahead in college admissions or whatever, right? Putting that into the hands of anyone who has access to a computer is so beautiful, right? And democratizing this technology, sure, there'll always be people who try to use it for bad, right? But I think the potential it has to change people's lives far outweighs that. And there'll always be another group of people who will try to regulate those people who are going to use it for bad.
So at this point, do you think you regret pursuing like a computer science degree? I mean, just recently, NVIDIA's CEO came out and said, we envision a future where everyone is able to program just using one language, which could be English, which could be Chinese, could be Japanese, whatever. Yep. Like, do you see that as a threat to like all the hard work you put into CS or not at all?
I think it's more beautiful than anything because you're not able to appreciate the end result if you haven't seen the journey, right? If there's someone, who hasn't like understand CS, whatever, I think it's beautiful if they're able to code in just English, right? But they're not able to appreciate how remarkable that truly is as much as someone who's seen how much work it took to get there, right? And seeing how rapidly it's evolving today, like I'm not saying it's perfect today, but like even like today, if I want to code something, I can ask GPT to generate me the code, right? That's already something that people thought was bonkers like 6 years ago, right? Like they'd call you insane if you said that, right? But it's so insane like how fast it's grown today, but it's caused me to appreciate it all the more, right? And I don't think you can truly appreciate like how beautiful it is. And sure, like, you think, oh, there's like a threat of, oh, am I going to get replaced? Whatever, right? People will find something to do. Like, that's how the world comes, right? And all you can do is stay ahead of the technology, right? Even today, sure, you can say that like, oh, AI is like replacing a lot of workers. But right now, I think AI is at the point where it's not replacing workers, but it's giving one worker the power to do the work of multiple people, right? And what is that one worker's skill? That one worker's skill is that he stayed ahead of that technology. He saw the journey that it took, and he was always like upkept with it to where he can use that technology to its fullest potential, right? AI is honestly just another tool to achieve, whatever someone wants to achieve in that case, right? And as long as you stay ahead of that technology, like, I don't think there's a real threat. Honestly, like, it'll always work out in that regard.
So with this in-depth knowledge you have, like, did you ever think about like starting your own thing or surrounding this technology, or are you just in a position where you want to be a part of something bigger and like work for large language model company?
I don't think I'm at a stage, like, I'm gonna be honest, like, it's a really big field, right? I would consider I'm no expert in this, right? I just, this is something I do in my own time, and also I was fortunate enough to, get research and internship experience in, but like, obviously there's so many more people like who know much more than me, right? But I think a lot of the stage why I'm hesitant right now to delve into it is because a lot of the, like, you'll see, like, you've seen this a lot, like, you know, there's people make jokes about like AI startups now, because anything that an AI startup tries to do, OpenAI will release something that just like shuts it down in like 6 months, because they'll just release something that does that, exactly that, right? And like, you'll see this thing, there's this thing called the GPT store out now, right, where people can like train their own custom GPTs and then sell them on the store. And sure, there's potential there and all that too. Like, I had ideas too, like for an AI thing, right? But I'll be honest, anything I've thought of, it's come up in like a couple of months, right?
Really?
So honestly, like,
that's tragic.
yeah, exactly. And there's this joke, because I attend a lot of hackathons, right? And like every time our team always has, we're not using LLMs anymore. We're not going to use LLMs because everyone's going to be using LLMs, right? So honestly, I'm trying to build something different now. And it's a very different experience because it's no NLP, and it's a lot more back to the basics of like traditional like ML techniques and a lot of like algorithms and how those work. And I think that's just a different side of, because my knowledge in CS is very niche, right? If you put me into like I took computer architecture that class, and that class was the bane of my existence. Like, I don't know what the heck was happening, right? I couldn't tell you what goes on in hardware or anything. I have a very niche knowledge. Even in AI, like, I'm not experienced in computer vision at all, right? Like, I couldn't tell you much. But like, I've developed this niche, but I think I'm also trying to venture out. So like, something I'm building right now, like, it's a very different experience, because like trying to build like a full stack app and a fully functional database with that is very different from anything I've ever done. But I think that's the beauty of it, because you almost hit like a plateau at one point with knowledge, right? Where it's like, yes, there's always more knowledge to consume in that field, but it's like, it's slower, right? The excitement of delving into a new field where there's so much to absorb all at once is like so cool. And that's what I'm doing right now, right?
Sorry, so is this project under wraps? Or...
Oh, no. I can talk
because
about it.
I just didn't. I was listening to it. I was like, I wonder. I was wondering if you announced.
Yeah, no, that's my bad. Yeah, it's basically this app where we're trying to make. Because one thing we realize is people hate making decisions. Mm-hmm. So, you know, like traditionally...
That's a funny one.
Yeah, no, I'm telling you. But we're just trying to take away... Not take away. You still have the option, but we're making it easier on you, right? So it's like when people... Like, one thing, you know, you'll see at Berkeley too, right? Is like subletting and like renting houses is a really big hassle, right? And sure, there's apps that come out to like, you know, like just for that. But the main thing that we're trying to innovate on is trying to make it almost like a dating app where... Let's say like I'm a user, right? And I want to go on and I want to find houses with my preferences, right? Okay, I can put in my preferences. I want this like rent limit, whatever, this many rooms, this much distance from campus. And then the algorithm will curate my first option for me. I don't have to look through like 18 different options and select the best one. It'll select what it thinks is the best for me. The first option will come up, right? I can look through it. I have 3 options. I can X out of it, go to the next one, archive it for price comparisons later, or schedule a tour right now, right?
Wow.
And if I don't like it, I can X out of it. The algorithm will learn off of that and then give me something else, like a right to my preference. It's literally like a dating app, right? It's the same thing, but it just allows you to like make less decisions, which we've realized is such a big thing. Like people are lazy. I'm lazy. I don't want to make that decision either, right? So if something can do it for me, like why not, you know?
So you're going back to the base, like you're not even using like all this AI, large language model.
No. Large language models aren't even being used at all in this case. It's just a lot of like traditional how matching algorithms work. And a lot of it comes down to like how, like, you know how like Netflix, so Netflix's recommender system to match like people to like movies is a lot based off of this thing called collaborative filtering. This is a really old AI technique. This is like from like 2007, 2008. But it's like, oh, if like Kathy watched a lot of like action movies and Alex also watched a lot of these action movies, but Alex watched this one movie that he liked that Kathy hasn't watched yet, they'll recommend that movie to Kathy, right? That's the basic idea of collaborative filtering. Obviously, like there's a lot of math in quantifying what someone likes and all that, but using that same technique, you can develop like a self-learning algorithm that curates to a user's preferences as well. So it's a lot going to a very different part of data science and working a lot with more like traditional data science tools. But like I'm more than happy to try that too, right? Because again, my knowledge is very niche. And I'll be honest, if you put me on like a traditional data science project, I'll be just as clueless as like the next person. So like it's really interesting to try and learn this side of it too.
Very cool. Mm-hmm. Well, I think we're nearing the end of our time, but before I do, I just want to ask you more of like, what is your future goal at this point? Like, you know, you're learning all about this AI. There's so much to learn about. Are you going to just continue learning about CS and really refine your knowledge, or are you going to try to branch into something else?
Yeah, I think like honestly, like my end goal is just doing what I'm interested in, right? Like I've always stood by this, you know, you have one life, right? Like fill it with as much as you can with like things you're actually interested in. And right now at CS, maybe tomorrow I wake up, I'm like, nah, I want to try fashion. It's not gonna work out probably, but like I'm down to try it, right? It's just do what excites you, right? Even in the future, like honestly, I don't have some like lofty goal of like, you know, like saving a bunch of lives or all that. Like, and I respect the people who do that, right? And they're great. But for me, it's more of just like wanting to experience as much as I can in the world. So honestly, like my ideal life would be just like having enough money to like have autonomy really early and then just traveling the world, right? And experiencing as many things as I can. And traveling the world, and so experiences aren't just limited to things you see, right? Like things I'm learning about, even with AI right now, these are new experiences. Right? These are new technologies that continue to amaze me, right? Or like a TV show I watch or a book I read that allows me to delve into a different type of experience and a different type of thing, right? Like experiences are learning, right? Even when you are traveling the world, you're learning about new cultures, new that, and it's beautiful, right? So no matter what it comes to, it's just about doing what excites you.
And that's a beautiful message. But whenever I hear that, I'm like, yeah, I could totally do it. How do I, as well as others, like stop scrolling? I mean, you have all these ideas in your head, but you just can't happen to just like want to execute it as much as you do.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think a lot of people like they put themselves in, again, it's the idea of decisions, right? But it's also just like, because they're like, oh, I wouldn't know where to start, right? Google it, GPT it. Like you have GPT now, right? If it's like, it depends on what it is. Like if you want to start any sort of initiative, right? Where it's fashion, a project in CS, or like a book you want to write, right? Literally talk to GPT, I'd recommend, social interaction, talk to someone, right?
don't
Worst
just
case,
stay in your room and
exactly,
talk to a chatbot.
right? That might be a little too lonely, but like talk to someone or whatever. It's like, okay, the thing about GPT is it's an expert in anything, right? And in most things in the world, right? So it's like, let's say you have some sort of initiative you want to do. It's like, okay, well, I'm interested in this. How do I start, right? You gotta list things. You might think they sound stupid, but like start somewhere. The thing is, you're going to start at somewhere stupid. I'll tell you, right? My AI thing literally started with, like, I don't know if we have time for this, but like real quick. I remember like, I literally like 2 weeks ago, I applied to Goldman Sachs investment banking as like a joke, right? For 2025. And then I got an interview and I was like, I don't know anything about investment banking, right? And I had 2 days left for until the interview, right? And I was like 4 hours in. And then I look up, I was like, what even is investment banking, right? And like
4 hours in,
I realized that when I asked my friend what I thought was investment banking isn't even investment banking. Like I thought that was what hedge funds do, but no, it's completely different, right? So I'm like, shit, like, okay, well now I lock in, right? I locked in for the next 2 days for my interview, whatever. And now I'm genuinely following finance markets and like keeping track of everything now, right?
That's why.
And it was just because of like
But did you get the job?
I haven't heard back yet because the interview was last Saturday.
Oh, right.
We'll see, right? But it was like the most random thing. I was like, okay, that's a joke. I'll apply to Goldman Sachs, right? And it just like that led me into this entire new industry that like I've never seen, but now I like know a decent amount about because I spent 50 hours straight looking at it. But it's like you don't have to start at have some knowledge. Like I'm being genuine. I had no knowledge of finance, right? All I knew about a stock was it's a part of a company. I don't know how else it works. Now, obviously, I know a lot more, but that's because I started somewhere, right? I jumped in somewhere. And sure, a lot of times, I think what I would recommend is put stakes on it, right? Put something that forces you to do it, right? In my case, it was the upcoming interview in 2 days that forced me, right? I had a stake on it, right? Make a bet with a friend or something. Genuinely, when I started writing, I used to write short stories in high school, right? A lot of times how I would motivate myself is I'd make a bet with a friend. I'd be like, I'll literally pay you $80 if I don't get 7 pages done within the next 5 days. Right. And then that motivated me to start. Right. And once you start, that's the hardest part. Right. Once you start, and because it's something that you have a genuine passion for, it's something you chose for yourself, you'll want to do more. Right. And you'll want to keep continuing. The hardest part with starting is just put something at stake. Right. Put something up at stake and it'll work out after that.
Then there's a timer and you put your pressure on yourself. Right.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a really big procrastinator. I'll tell you this, right? In high school, people who were failing high school would tell me I'm a really big procrastinator, right? And it's I realized that what works for me is just putting things at stake, right? And once I start, then the rest just comes.
Action or perfection?
Action in pursuit of perfection, but it's the same idea of aim for Mars and reach for the aim for Mars and land on the moon, right? It's like aim for perfection, but realize it's realistically not going to happen. But what you've built already is really beautiful.
All right. Well, kind of going into the closing part of our podcast, we have a tradition where the last guest asks the next guest a question without knowing who it is. Mm-hmm. And the question that's been left for you is on this notebook here. And it is, if you could have one superpower, what would it be and why?
Time control.
Time control.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that?
I mean, the human life is filled with regrets, right? It's like honestly, it's a lot more less with regrets, but it's more of like, I have this idea of what if, like what if this had happened at this stage in life? What would have happened, right? And it's like, sure, I think it would affect me in a way where like, I don't have like stakes now because like every decision doesn't matter anymore, but it opens myself up to a lot more possibilities and a lot more to experience, right? Because I can go back and like try something else and see what I would experience. I honestly, I'm just an addict for experiences, so that's why.
Do you think that there was a different path for you that you could have taken but didn't?
I mean, yeah, for sure. Like I honestly, this is an idea that I have that keeps me optimistic every day, because we're at Berkeley and it's so like, people get depressed all the time. And this is something I always tell someone, like a lot of my biggest things that have happened in my life, some of my closest friends, some of like whatever like happened, right? My biggest opportunities always started from the smallest thing, right? It's like this random person who replied to my story one day became one of my closest friends who's impacted my life in so many ways. We have so many great memories now, right? That's just one example or something else, right? And it makes me always optimistic. Like, there could have been something tiny that I didn't even think about that I did today that could lead into something like that's so great tomorrow, right?
Right.
And that keeps me optimistic, because like I try to think at the end of my day, I'm like, what are some cool things that happened today that could maybe lead to, and I'll just start going into like a what if, like what if this leads to this? What if this leads to this? And it keeps you optimistic and like keeps it going. And I think it's just something good to have in your life,
That's beautiful. I love that. So continuing our tradition, what would be a question you'd want to ask for the next guest?
Yeah. So this is a question I've asked a lot of friends too. So if you could see one number above anyone's head, like everyone's heads, what would it be? Like some certain metric about them?
Like if they could see anything,
like it's like
thoughts?
it's like for example, it's like I could see like, oh, how many relationships someone's had, like as a number, right? Like any aspect of them as a number. What number would they want to see above anyone's heads?
That's an interesting one. Okay, I'll make sure to pass that along.
Awesome.
Well, where can people find you?
Magic show, no kidding. Yeah, I mean, just hit me up, if you have any questions about anything. On Instagram, we got Tejas Bhatia, or find me in your but just hit me up anywhere, Instagram, LinkedIn. Actually, not LinkedIn, I'll think you're a sweat, but yeah, probably Instagram, honestly.
You might get those ML sweats on there,
Hey, I mean,
this is
you trying to connect, guys, or what? Like LinkedIn Riz? Nah, I'm kidding.
Well, anyways, thank you so much, Tay. I really enjoyed the lessons that you dropped and the stories you told today.
Thank you too.
Seems like there's a lot of unresolved stories, but we might have to have you on again.
Maybe, we'll see. Hey, someone's got to interview you at one point.
One day. Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Of course. All right.